Hello, everybody, and welcome to another week of our conversation on why Black Lives Matter. Today, we are going to be talking around the topic of education and education inequality and inequity within the education system. So I'm going to open it up to everybody to just kind of give us their view on how this topic has impacted or affected them and what their views are on it. And we'd also like to invite everybody to share their thoughts and insights with us in the comments. And if you have any questions that you feel like we can address, or if you have any information that can lead to a richer discussion, we welcome your comment, please. So yeah, everybody, I think one of the things that triggered the conversation was around a video that Deji shared with us around people actually just kind of using their privilege to get their kids into colleges where they may not have qualified. So I can imagine that, you know, from a donations point of view, people do those kind of things because they influence the system. This was a greater influence in terms of actually having a college recruiter and just kind of literally paying the way for the child, which obviously, because of the fame of the parents, kind of highlighted the topic quite a bit. And one of the things that the daughter then did was, in a conversation, just highlighted how much of her privilege she didn't understand while she had it, and how her behavior in terms of social media was just frivolous because of the fact that she didn't understand it, as opposed to not appreciating it at all. So I kind of want to open the conversation to everybody and just kind of get a sense of where you're at with this topic and how privilege may or may not have influenced your life and impacted your opportunities, and whether or not you actually realize that there was a level of privilege in some way or another in the first place. So, and I think for me, one of the things that stands out for me is just from a not privileged point of view is you don't kind of get the sense that you don't have the opportunity because you just work, you know. And so my core value was to actually work hard, but the actual opportunity that was denied was that there was a financial element to what my mother couldn't do based on historical things within South Africa, where privilege was kind of almost, well, it wasn't even almost, it was attached to race in a sense. And so even though I didn't get the full impact of what we then had as a legislative thing called apartheid, which was basically enforced segregation, it was that generationally, there were a lot of opportunities denied because of the fact that previous generations didn't have the kind of opportunity to make the money that would have made their kids more comfortable, that would have allowed them to go to universities and colleges more freely and more easily. So yeah, it's kind of been a thing that I've kind of had to look into it from the perspective of, I don't really carry the pain, but there is possibly generational pain that may be something that we kind of inadvertently overlook because we didn't bear the brunt of what actually happened at the time. But because of what happened at the time, we possibly didn't have the privilege that we could have had if things were more equal and if there was more equity within the system. So that's kind of my sense of growing up with the lack of privilege, or the opportunities that were tougher because of the denial of kind of freedom of equality within a country. So I kind of want to open it up to everybody else and see what your sense is of the topic, and where, and just kind of let's feel into it. Let's feel into what the healing is in this space. And yeah, let's continue in that way.
I just wanted to also say, for like anyone who's watching, the kind of like defining what equity versus equality is. We use it sometimes in exchange of the other. And I forget who sent it. I think maybe it was you, Granville, sent us a meme, and it was this picture of these three men, one really short, one, medium height, and one, really tall, right? And they were looking over the fence to look at the baseball game, and they all had the same box, and that was equality. They were all given the same thing. And then equity was, well, the tall guy didn't have a box because he could easily see over the fence without a box. The middle guy had a smaller box to help him see over the fence, and the small guy had a larger box, and it was all equal to what would have been given out, versus, from the equality standpoint. So really, equity is focused on giving everyone a fair shot to have the same thing, the same ideals and the same goals, and giving everyone that opportunity, because some people are just born with privilege, right? And so it's giving those people who are not born physically with those privileges to have those opportunities, to have the same experiences as those that weren't. And equality is making sure that everyone is given, is basically, we use equality in terms of like everyone should be treated the same in respect. Everyone should be loved the same in that respect, right? But there's a level of in education, this happens a lot, where there's not a sense of equity, right?
Yeah.
And we saw that, everyone knows, I think, what happened in the news with the Full House. I can't remember her name, but she's Rebecca in Full House.
Lori Loughlin.
Thank you. And her daughters, and like what they did there, and what a lot of celebrities did in that case of, parents who got their children into colleges just by, paying for it. And yeah, like, college shouldn't be like university, and like education shouldn't be something that you get to have because you're rich. It's just, it's a fundamental thing so that all of the human race, right, it's so that all the human race can evolve together. And it should be a choice of, do you want, it should be a choice of, do I want to go to college, right? It should be that person's choice, and not based on like, I can't afford it, or I would never get into any of the colleges that would probably be what I need. I've seen many cases where kids, I remember when I was in college, where kids were like, well, I couldn't afford that school, so I just didn't apply for it, and I ended up doing a major at another school because I would get a full ride there. Like, so for example, they'd be like, oh, well, I get a full ride by being a teacher at this school, but I couldn't get a full ride to go to med school, so I guess I'm not going to be a doctor. And so, like,
I think some of the ways I've seen it play out as well is that because of affordability, there would be people that would have to go to school based on sporting scholarships and things like that, because the educational system in and of itself was inequitable. So there were different levels of educational system based on different race groups, and it was kind of an enforced thing, and it took quite a while to change that kind of thing. So it's that equity of, is the playing field even just level? And that's really what you're speaking to in terms of the meme I showed around the boxes. The playing field in and of itself was not a level or equal playing field.
Well, and I think the interesting thing, when I watched that video of, that we, that you sent to us about the whole story and what have you, what came up for me was like this: the girl didn't even want to go to college. She didn't even have a desire to go to college. And here are these kids who do want to go to college and can't go to college. This is where, for me, my upset is like, like, college in and of itself is not something that like people, education in and of itself should be something that's desired. And so if you desire it, you should be able to have it. And if you don't desire it, then you don't get it. Right?
Absolutely.
And so, when I look at, certain people that I've met along the way, because I've, worked with, kids in colored communities and things like that. And the fact that they feel like, well, I have to literally settle in order to have education, even though I want more than anything to be a doctor, but I'm going to go to school to be a hairdresser because that's all I can afford to do with my life. That's when we have to question if there is a fair playing field. And guess what? Us as a country, as a community, lost out on a potentially amazing doctor because of that. And so, like, I think that I think the upset tends to always be like of why we get confused here is, well, we don't want to be a socialist country where, like, everyone has to, like, I have to give a part of my good to let someone else have my good. But it's this false belief that, like, you have to give a part of yourself away or belittle yourself in order for another to thrive and to do better. And that's not the case, because that's from the belief that, like, your good comes from you, whereas we all know your good comes from God. So yeah, that's putting that out there and hoping someone has the next piece of that. But I feel like there's something in regards to this belief system that our communities have around feeling like they're being taken from when we lift up others.
So one of the things that actually stood out for me in the video, and I think it's a good idea for us to actually share the video at some point, is also just, one of the ladies in this red table talk was also like, I understand where you're coming from. I'm just tired of being understanding. I'm just tired of actually trying to get your point of view when actually the community that has suffered, the community that hasn't had the opportunity, the community that has not been able to provide the same kind of thing for their kids is not your community. And my conversation is not against you. It's just the situation has become so bad that we are actually just fatigued under some of these circumstances and under some of these situations. And one of the things that struck me in that conversation was like, you know what? If I'd had the opportunity, I would have loved to take a freaking gap year, like many of my white counterpart friends were able to do, that I met in my first year of university after they'd taken their first year, the first gap year kind of thing after school. So those kind of things, it's those seemingly unimportant things that actually speak to the privilege. Because as a kid growing up in a colored community, it was either university or find your damn job, because actually this is the next step. There wasn't the opportunity to say, well, actually, for this year, I'm just actually going to take a break and sit back and maybe just learn some stupid stuff that may not benefit me, but that actually just gives me the opportunity to breathe. And so what the resultant factor is for me was school, 4 years of university, 19 years of working, and all of that in succession. Whereas there's no real opportunity to kind of say, like, actually, maybe I can take that step, that sit back for a year and actually understand what it is I really want to study, and what it is that will actually give me the qualification that I'm going to progress with in my life.
Yeah, I think too is like we have this big, huge misunderstanding of, like, in our society, that like we have this belief that for you to be successful, you have to go to college. For you to get a great job, you got to go to college. Bill Gates didn't even graduate from high school, and he's Bill Gates. We put so much emphasis on, like, really feeling like for any part of our society to be successful, they have to go to college, and that is not the truth. And there are some people who go to college, and halfway through they just realize this is not where they're supposed to be, and they build their own business or become entrepreneurs or whatever it is. But it really, like you said, it needs to come to a place where, like, those who really truly desire to be there needs to be doors and opportunities and ways for them to do that without them having to go into the next 10, 15 years of school debt paying off these loans and or like there needs to just be more opportunities and more funding for these people. And then you have kids who are going to college that got everything paid for. And I mean, I have friends like this who got everything paid for and they threw it down the drain by partying and doing all these other things because they really didn't want to be there. But that was because society
Changing
told
the
them that's the
major
next
every
step.
year.
Oh, dear Jesus. I know. I heard that one. Like, I graduated 10 years ago and I still have friends trying to figure out their major. Still in school trying to figure that out. Like, it's ridiculous, but it is this belief that the only way you could be truly successful is to go to college. Like, that's what I remember all through high school. You got to do this to get into college. You got to do this to have this. You got to do this to do this. And I'm just like, I personally did not go to college after high school. I went to a community college, did AA, that was it. Like, I was as far as Kanisha needed to go, and I'm still very successful in my life. But I was programmed for 4 years that, like, the only way that you're going to be able to have what you want and the life that you want, thank God for this work, because we know that ain't the truth, is you got to go to college and you got to get this grade or this score on your SATs and all this nonsense. You just put so much pressure on our youth about how the only way that they're gonna be successful is by going to college.
Well, it's it's interesting because like we don't emphasize. I mean, the real reason why we say those things is because education is how you become abundant. Like you can't be abundant and you can't live a life in this world on earth without education, without growing yourself, without learning. Can you learn in other capacities? Yeah. Do we literally degrade all these other kinds of jobs because we think that something else is better? Yeah, that's how society has put us. But if we can like change the perception of society as to like, okay, well, you could be a janitor and that's cool. That's dope. Well, you don't need to go to college for that. Or I want to be a painter. I want to be a tattoo artist. I want to be a makeup artist, right? Something that's not college related. You just do your craft. You keep practicing. You keep doing it. You watch and do e-courses. You like, that's what's going to support you. It's like, I feel like education right now is changing, and we are kind of getting off topic as to like what's happening here, but education as a whole is changing. And I think that that's going to actually really benefit how we serve our community and all people, because I think now we're looking at like, especially even with the pandemic, we're looking at how do we do like a course that's just focused on this certification because someone wants to just learn about this thing, or how do we price it in a way where like people can get like a little e-course thing from Harvard University and do it online now. And so I feel like education is changing. Is it enough to serve the whole community? I don't know. But like I feel like there's some like belittling happening in terms of like what type of education you have or job you have.
Yeah, because I mean it doesn't prove your intelligence.
There you go.
If you're intelligent, you're intelligent. I mean, one of my friends, I was helping him do like some type of schoolwork, and it was like engineering related, and I was like taking the tests and passing them. And I did not fucking go to college.
No.
I definitely didn't go for engineering, but I was taking these tests. And Ray took one and he failed.
Yeah, I tried it.
But he went to college. So like it's just like we all know different stuff. We're all different people, and that's why we're all one.
Amen. And it just goes to prove like where your intelligence comes from. Exactly. And that's the thing too, like we all have a role on this earth. It's not like just because your parents are rich doesn't mean that like you're meant to be, going to school to be a rich doctor like them. If you want to be a baker, go be a baker. That's your role in life. And like, Jeff and Shaleia even talked.
Smart example.
I mean, like, you know, Jeff actually even talks about this in one of the church sermons. I can't remember which one, but they had said something along the lines of like, you know, you're born into the family that you're born into, and like you choose that in some way and capacity. But at the same time, ultimately, like it's your choice as to where you want to be in your life. And giving people like the opportunities, even if they're born into a situation where they couldn't, like, because I feel like that's like something that's constantly being used as an example, where people are like, well, their parents didn't work half as hard as mine did, and mine are rich, so they don't deserve to go to the school that I went to. And like, that's just bleh, yuck.
Yeah, I think it also like it's about like the work you put in. There were some kids, you know, in school that were busting their ass because they really wanted that.
Right. Amen.
Yeah, but you know what I'm feeling into this. It's the educational thing. I think is a very generational thing from the perspective of our forefathers had to be educated to even just be allowed into a conversation. So it became a thing in our communities where like college was the standard. You had to have a piece of paper because it was the standard. You weren't admitted to any table if there wasn't a piece of paper, and that was purely based on the color of your skin. Whereas some people may have done the Bill Gates thing through experience and all those other things. And because of the fact that they were white, they were admitted to that table. And I can almost imagine that it must have been similar for females to an extent, that you weren't admitted to a certain conversation until you had a piece of paper, because then they couldn't just discount you. Which is the historical stuff that generationally is why the college thing has become such a massive thing. And actually, it really boils back down to, how intelligent are you? Where does your intelligence come from? And can I actually have this freaking conversation with you, make sense, and we can actually find a reasonable middle ground that all of us can actually work from? Which would have been a much healthier relating blueprint, but that wasn't there. So what did people find in that blueprint space? They found everything to fill the gap that the conversation and the respect and the humanity wasn't allowed to fall.
Like the thing that I feel is really like missing in education that like just divides us so much is just like the idea that like we don't believe we're all divine and we're all like connected to divine intelligence. And yeah, and just like as we're learning this now, I've been able to like heal a lot of like the times in high school where I felt like I wasn't like the best student. Yeah, because I realized, oh wait, the way that they are using education is not in a way to uplift right now. It's to kind of divide and
control.
Yeah, and control.
Because so many people are denied opportunities because they don't have a piece of paper. And yet the piece of paper means nothing, because I can tell you, I have postgraduate qualifications in psychology, and I did not use them once in my HR role in a corporate, because nobody wants to hear about a theory of job satisfaction or work motivation or work values. They want to understand if you know how to take people through the processes, if you know how to manage processes, if you know how to manage recruitment. And that is not something that's a practical thing within your studies. That's a practical thing based on a company's policies.
You get it, Granville. I love everything you're saying.
Me too. Me too. I mean, like, yeah, I agree with you, Grandpa. Like, I went to college, and like, I remember I mean, this is maybe another topic and maybe this is for next week, but like I remember going into like interview for things, and I mean, I had 4.0, like double major, like this whole thing on paper. I looked great, right? And I got passed up for a job by like a dance major because she knew somebody in the company, right? Like,
oh wow.
and it's like I just paid like $100,000 to be the receptionist at a company when I could have gotten the high-paying job if I had known somebody. Like,
yeah,
it just goes to show.
Deep like that. I have quite a few friends who are still paying off student loans who major and aren't even doing a job in what they majored because it's not available to them, or because daddy's friend got someone, their child, that job because they knew people. Like, it's really
Right.
It's beyond ridiculous. Like, beyond
Right.
ridiculous.
It shows up in the workplace too, for
Yep.
sure. It doesn't just stop at high school. It doesn't just stop at college or post grad. It's fluid in all areas, where you're basically told you're not valuable unless you know someone, right? Or unless you went to this
Yeah.
specific school or learned this specific thing.
This just reminds me of this YouTube video I randomly watched. It was like this guy, and he was just like, I'm burning my worthless degrees, and he just set them all on fire.
Oh my God.
You know,
Wow.
and you know what? You know, the nice thing is that
Yeah.
we all relate from some point of view
Mm,
to the flaws in the system, which is
yeah.
quite healthy for us to be able to have it in our awareness. Because one of the things about healing is that if it's not in your awareness, you cannot heal it. It has to be in somebody's awareness at some point for us actually to lead the healing in some way or another. So it's good for us to be able to relate to components of a flawed system. But I also think it's much better for us to have it in our awareness so that we can relate within the healing of the flawed system.
Amen. Yeah, and I think the healing of it is really just us all recognizing like the worthiness piece and component of it, of like, this paper isn't my worth, that like what I say isn't my worth, what like I know intellectually isn't my worth. Like, where does my worth come from? And I think exploring that and going deeper there helps us to like kind of break down the system so that everyone has the equal chance and opportunity to be themselves
Take
and
the
like learn and
opportunity
grow.
if they
and
want the opportunity,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Like everyone gets to have that choice, and it's not based on, oh well, you know, everyone needs to have this because if you don't, you're going to have a horrible life. Well, no, everyone gets to have a great life. We're all clear there. Now, what do you want to do with your life? Okay, that's your choice, and you get to, you know, do whatever that is, right? And it in kind of like breaking that down, I think that's where we find the healing and the solution to finding equality and equity for, you know, colored people in the educational system, and, you know, even like poverty and stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Molly, I know we took part of what you were saying and we kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent and got on a little bit of a soapbox. So I just wanted to check, is there anything else that you wanted to kind of add to what you were saying?
Well, I did have some stuff come up like while you guys were talking. But yeah, like the division is very linked to poverty. Like we've talked about this a couple of times already in our discussion. Like you guys know, like I grew up with a pretty nice school, and I had a lot of opportunities to like explore myself, and like it like the education I received, it was good. It still like was, oh, you have to get an A to be like good enough or whatever, but like still like I was able to explore myself and get really clear on like what I wanted to do, which is not like a privilege everyone gets to have. And I think like Granville, you were saying like something about like you have to recognize the healing and in order to heal it, and that's what's really important for everyone to do, is like recognize their privilege with like or like lack thereof when healing this. And yeah, like it was really important for me to realize, oh wait, wow, no, like I'm an exception over here. Like not everyone gets to have what I have when I like, with my education. And yeah, like and that didn't sit well with me. So I really like I feel part of my life purpose eventually is to help people, help create education that really lifts everyone up, and that yeah, I just that's really what I'm passionate about. And yeah.
Don, I know we went through quite a bit of a process with you in terms of just talking through carrying some issues of guilt and stuff like that. And do you kind of still feel triggered by that, or do you feel like it's a lot more released now?
Well, yeah, I see the bigger picture here. I don't think it's like a big, I don't know. I guess I'm a little tired, but that could be something.
Are you tired because you've gone through upheaval, or you're tired because you're actually just sick and tired of talking about the same shit?
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both. I was upheaving like big time, but
Yeah, and the reason why I'm asking you is because sometimes I also feel like that. I like, like I resonated with the woman in the conversation who said, you know what? We are actually just tired of these little girls wanting compassion after they've had all this privilege. And so it goes in circles and roundabouts, and we know that we go the layer for layer into healing it. So I also sometimes feel like, sweet Jesus, can we not talk about something else at some point, right? But then there's also the point at which, like, if it's coming back into my awareness, there's another layer of healing. And that's why I'm asking the question, because it's not specific to you, it's specific to all of us. Like, at which point do we feel comfortable that even though we're revisiting things, we're revisiting it from a new perspective and we're healing another piece? And how do we translate that healing into other components?
yeah, let's stop talking about the problems and actually talk about the solution here. Yeah, feels good. And like the solution is this work,
Yeah.
like just recognizing our divinity and getting to know ourselves. And yeah, like I know like this, like I was able to get to know myself so well, and I was able to quit my job at Target to do what I love, and I'm 21. I don't even have a degree. um so yeah, I've seen a lot of like just weird things in the educational system. Like my whole high school was like, oh my god, like college, like we had like that's all anyone could talk about was college. And now I don't think I'm gonna try to even go for a degree. I'm in college right now, like taking like a few classes. But yeah, it's, and I do recognize my privilege there. Like I'm just in college. You know, and I don't think I need to graduate. Like but yeah, that's because like I found this work, and I realized like I didn't want to be a part of the system that was that's trying to separate. I am creating my new system. Like we're creating our new system here to unify.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that just like, it feels more a lot more peaceful, because actually what we're doing is we're stepping out of the fault in order to see the fault more clearly. Because one of the things that you cannot do is you can't always heal something if you are in the thick of it. You can't always see it clearly if you don't actually take that step back a little bit occasionally. So for me, one of the things is I have had 2 years of rest out of being inside of a corporate. And it's just like, it's like a different feeling of, goodness, there's so much to do. There's so much that can be done in bringing mirror exercise work into all components within a corporate life and creating harmony in that way within the work life. So, it's taken me the 2 years, and I think it was by design more than by default for God to just say, actually take the step out and understand what this has done for you and understand how you can take this back into the world in that way if you ever get called to go back into a corporate. Ganesha, you're not giving us cards today.
You've just been in a flow. Usually I wait when there's some pausing, but
Yeah, no.
person we have is present. You live in the moment and are able to bring forth the energy of love in your current circumstances.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think it is about presence. You kind of need to be present to the pretty and not so pretty, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you actually don't realize what is actually happening there. And yeah, again, I love that the unpretty comes into our awareness, because that's actually the places where we know maximum healing can take place.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah, I guess what's coming up for me in this moment is like really getting clear on like a lot of these kids who are going to college. A lot of the time they have this pressure that they have to, because they are like the source of their family. They're the one who's going to bring like success to the family, in a sense. Like I have a lot of friends, myself being included, being like, oh, I'm the first one who's going to go to college, and my parents have this expectation or really desire for me to be like the first one to make something of myself, and end up going to college and really doing something that they're not passionate about, something that they're not truly, that's really truly feeding their soul. And I don't know, it made me feel a little sad for a second to think of like how we will pressure our youth sometimes to show up and fill in, I guess, in the lack of where the previous generation did not. Yeah, I can let that go. And that's part of us bringing this work, is for the generations to come, so that they can not have to struggle and like live life on these patterns of feeling like, if I don't do this, I'm going to lack, or I'm going to have to struggle for the rest of my life if I don't give myself an education. Yeah.
And I think one of the healthiest things that I feel is something that can be taken out into the world, especially in that age range where people are making decisions for their future, is to understand what life purpose actually is.
Yes.
Because if they understand that, they won't be making decisions that are going to put them in roles where they unhinge in their midlife, because they didn't understand the purpose of it. Sorry, and they were just following a family tradition, or they were just following what was expected of them. So I do feel like life purpose work becomes essential at that age, because one of the things that, like, just going through career psychology and counseling psychology, was the idea that somebody who's between the ages of 16 and 18 years old decides on a qualification at that age that's going to actually determine the rest of their life.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And even in my own personal life, that was a fight that I had to have with my or with my parents, because growing up, I wanted to be a pediatrician. And then by the time I hit 18, I realized that that's actually not what I wanted to do. And that's not my why. And that's not what's going to drive me. And there was a massive blow up because they thought, oh, Kanisha was going to go off to college and become a pediatrician. And that's not what I did. And now I'm doing things that
Kanisha was like, surprise, I'm not doing that.
I'm like, one too many episodes of Grey's Anatomy, y'all, and I ain't doing it. It's not happening. So yeah, just having to really get clear on like what it was that I really desired to do, and then having to stick my ground and not have to make choices based off of what other people thought, and going into those people pleasing patterns that we just tend to like fall into. And so yeah, having to really know your life purpose, and that's the beauty of life purpose class. And even prior to life purpose class, I thought I had an idea of what I wanted, but as soon as I was starting to get really clear and working through upsets of my creativity like being shoved to the side or not being received in the way that I wanted to show up in the world, through these classes, it really helped me get clear on my true desires and what I wanted to bring to this world. And now, as I do that, the people who are against it are like, wow, this is actually, yeah, what Kanisha is meant to do. And she should be doing this. And like, she's helping different people. And so you're right. Like, our generation really does need to understand the difference between going to college to get a really good job and possibly going to college to further and deepen your life purpose. If that's what your life purpose is calling in, is a college education, it'll make it very clear, and in a sense, God will make a way for it because it's part of your life purpose.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of jogged me from where Marley was going with like healing education in that way, just to get educators and people being educated to understand what purpose work actually is, and guiding kids and leading them in that way so that they actually find the fulfillment earlier in life.
Yeah, like I think about like Billie Eilish a lot. Like her parents like homeschooled her and like just let her explore, and she's like super successful just at a really young age. And yeah, like that's what we could be doing. Like we could be like cultivating like superstars like left and right, you know, or like not like that, but like superstars in anything, you know. And that's what's like really cool. Like there needs to be like freedom. Like there needs like people, like that's what is, I feel like we're healing here too, is like recognizing we're free no matter what. Having a college degree doesn't get you freedom. Having like money like right now, lots of money is not gonna like give you freedom. It's God that gives you freedom, and that's how you attract more of it. Like that's the process. And like the other thing is like you don't want to like go to a job, like work and get an education just to be free, like, and just have money. Like you want to work and do your job to like love people and express your freedom and express your abundance and express God. Yeah, that's what's missing.
Mm.
Yeah, I really loved what you said, Marley. You know, I was just thinking about this, and like I was even just talking to her about it. Like Greta Thunberg too, right? She, you know, she's just like killing it, right? She's just doing what she loves, and like no one like says like, oh, I want to be an activist when I grow up, and like that's going to make tons of money or whatever. Like, you know, when we raise our children, like we need to be raising them from a place of like authenticity. And it's always when the person is in their authentic space and doing things that they're passionate about, and like allowing that passion to grow and thrive, as you mentioned with Billie Eilish. And, you know, that's where we'll see more success, you know. And I think sometimes, like, you know, we look at countries where they kind of are churning people out, learning, teaching them the same things, that they can just have a lot of people in a specific field of study. We'll see that to me that feels like a really like a short-term success, rather than, you know, long term, because I look at like you can't create an Einstein, right? Like you can't create an Alexander Bell. That happens from that child naturally just exploring and being themselves. And so yeah, like I have to believe that like our education like system is set to like, yeah, not serve us, and basically also just like keeping it from people is also not serving us. Like it's like neither is working.
You know I'm like feeling into that, and I feel like that's actually the healing part. That's the healing piece today, because from a kind of racial point of view, it's not very easy for underprivileged races to allow that child to explore in that way. There's real issues of keeping your child off the street and keeping your child away from drug dealers and away from street fights and those kind of things. So, you know, I feel like that's kind of the piece of healing here, because, you know, it's a fabulous ideal, and we need to kind of heal past the reality of some of the things happening right now. And I'm not saying it's in all race groups, but I mean there's significant components where it's actually quite, it's like a day-to-day life thing where you kind of need to actually possibly as a parent even buffer them a lot more than you would have if they weren't in those environments. And do you actually have the resources to actually do that? And, you know, and then I think, you know, to ask the question is to also say, well, you know what, there's another reality that we also need to remember and that we also need to heal through, even if we're not completely affected by it. And I can tell you very comfortably, going to school was sometimes a challenge, because while I didn't live in the areas where those kind of things happened, my mother just refused to send me to school in another area. So I went to school in those areas, whether I lived there or not. So my friends that I was growing up with, that from a schooling point of view, were living that reality while I wasn't. And that's one of the things my sister kind of highlighted to me over this weekend when we were chatting. She's like, you know, there were things that we were probably not affected by because we grew up in a more metropolitan area as opposed to a suburban area. But our schools were in the suburban areas. And it was just one of those things where it was go to school with the same, because you're just actually gonna settle in better, even if you don't live there. So yeah, you know, it's like feeling into it. I think it's probably a nice piece of healing for us to do and to tackle at some point during one of our conversations.
It feels to me like war, like that, like that's healing. I don't know. That's just like what's coming up. Cause like there's just so much like inner conflict and so much outer conflict being reflected from that.
Mm.
So yeah, that's just what's coming up. And I've also been like, I don't know, the Civil War has been coming up a lot in my reality recently. I don't know why. Yeah, Ray said me too. So
Well,
yeah.
then you may have that. Then that's exactly where we need to go with our healing.
Yeah, I may have said this once, was that the planets that are in alignment right now haven't been in alignment since the Civil War, and so it's bringing up stuff to come up.
Yes.
They're not crazy. You're in alignment.
It's a good it's a good awareness to have, and it's a good alignment because you know, as much as we want to believe that we're not affected celestially, we are. And we are of this world as well as not of this world. And so we are impacted by the movement of these planets and these retrogrades and transitions and all those other things. It's just who we are. We are of this world, even if we might not completely be in this world, or the other way around. The fact of the matter is we are part of an ecosystem and we have our part to bring. And in our part to bring, we also have the feeling to feel. So yeah, I think a good place to go, possibly even next week, is into healing more internal conflict when it comes to this topic of why Black Lives Matter.
We have surrender fear. Let go of the fearful stories you are telling yourself. Stay in the moment, focus on solutions, and celebrate every baby step forward, which went hand in hand with that presence card.
That felt good.
And I laughed too, because there's a planet here and he's like fighting, like trying to push, like fight through, like punch through the war, really. Like Saturn's back here.
Oh, that's good. How are all of you feeling right now?
I don't know about you guys, but I felt like I was gonna say Keely. I apologize, Marley. Marley, a heavy, tired feeling as well. Like just
I
kind
was just about to say that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Deji looks a little tired over there too.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like I can really relate with what Granville said. Like, I'm sick and tired. Right? Like, I'm just sick and tired. I'm tired of
the
like
same damn conversation.
Well, and it's also just like I'm tired because like I think what it is, and I was talking about this with a bunch of people yesterday too. Like, I'm tired of fighting because fighting something like just drains and leaks your energy. I want to stand up for whatever it is that empowers me. Standing up gives me power, energizes me, right? That fighting energy is what tires us. The idea that we have to like beat the system, that the system is greater or bigger than us. Well, guess what? We create the system. We manifest the system. And so like yeah, I'm really learning where to honor inner work and to also stand up in my truth and state like this is what the solution is and this is like what I desire and what I want, and I'm gonna see a world that looks like this. And just saying that and standing in my power there, that gives me a lot. Like I already feel a hell of a lot more better. That gives me energy, whereas like talking about like it sucks that the solution just sucks and then this and this is not working, and like that tires me sometimes because like, and I think that's where the movement that's really the reason why I think the Black Lives Matter movement sometimes like peters off and then comes back, and we have these inconsistencies that we've seen in the world. I think it's really just because people are, using activism as a way to like fight it and fight the system rather than like change the system. And that kind of reminds me of what Kanisha's card was, which is, discussing the solution, going from the solution, right? Having a solution focused thing. And it's like, okay, well, now we know the solution is, what can we do as a group right now to change that solution? What are things that we can do in this moment to go out in the world and take action? Because now's the time, right? We've done the inner work, we've laid the foundation. How do we make the change now? How do we bring it into the world?
Yeah, and that, and the other thing is, sometimes the tired energy is actually just releasing the struggle, because it's been a perceived or actual struggle for so long that sometimes when you actually feel tired, it's not about the tiredness. It's about releasing that energy of struggle and that energy of fear and that energy of kind of opposition. And it's good to actually rest out of that space and allow that energy of exhaustion to leave. Because the other thing that you do when you don't allow it is you're fighting yourself. You're resisting your own need to rest, which doesn't serve anybody either.
Amen.
Cool. So we got a couple more minutes to go. It's been quite a quick conversation. And, I say that to Laurentia sometimes, and he's like, well, time is an illusion. I'm like, thank you. I am reminded of that. But yeah, I feel like the conversation went very quickly.
I'm excited about next week. Like
Yeah.
I feel like I'd love to talk about the Civil War and like talk about like go deeper in that. Cause like well what I was reminded of in this conversation today is like after the slaves were freed and they were like Lincoln had a plan to like pay back and build like have like reparations for like ex-slaves and like the Black community so they can like start building their lives, and then they were denied that. So that's kind of what has just kept this whole thing, like the Black community being delayed in education and like abundance and so much. And it's like kind of crazy that it's like the planets were aligned back then. And also Joe Biden was a Confederate general, Robert E. Lee, I think. And now he's president. So it's just like,
I just realized that. Oh my God.
Wow.
Talk about like 360 healing.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm excited for next week.
Awesome team. We are going to have a fun discussion next week. So yeah, thank you everybody for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. Please feel free to like and subscribe to our Church of Union YouTube channel, where you will find all our previous conversation around why Black Lives Matter. And we will see all of you next week. Thank you for joining us.